Hi, class. Hopefully your online work is going well. I haven't heard too much from anybody, so I'm assuming everyone is doing fine. So this week what we're going to do is we're going to cover linear equations and how to graph. And you'll see on your MyMathLab that the tool to graph, you just have to use it a couple times and you'll get it pretty quickly. You'll have to make sure that you click on two different spots because every line needs 2 points to graph it. So let's just get started. We'll just do the basics. For starting out, what is a linear equation? So a linear equation is exactly what it says. It's an equation that has both an x and a y, and they're both to the first power, and when you graph them, they become a line. So there's two different formats that we're going to work with. For the most part, you're going to be working in the point-slope format, but I will show you the slope-intercept format just because you will see it in the MyMathLab. So let me get a different pen. So the first kind is called slope-intercept. Most of you are familiar with this one. This is the one that you see in every Algebra 1 course, in every high school, even pre-algebra sometimes. So it's called, the very general form is y equals mx plus b. Now I've had lots of students that can mimic that and say, oh yeah, it's y equals mx plus b, but they don't really know what each part means. So we're going to go over each part and make sure you understand what the parts are, where to start, how to graph it. So with slope-intercept, the slope part is your m. M is a symbol that stands for slope. I have heard many different reasons why they use m, but I won't go into that now. So just remember, m is your slope. And then b is what's called the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is exactly what it means. It means where your line intercepts or crosses the y-axis. So in graphing, you have what's called a Cartesian coordinate system. So it looks like this. The horizontal is what's called the x-axis. The vertical is what's called the y-axis. So when we're talking about b in a slope-intercept format, what we're talking about is some value at some point on the y-axis. And so it crosses right at whatever that value is, right on the x or the y-axis, excuse me. So that's why it's called the y-intercept, because it intercepts or crosses over the y-axis. So as we're working through this, what we're doing is we're looking at a physical line at this point. When we get into the business aspect, we'll be looking at cost functions, we'll be looking at price. These are all linear equations. So a linear equation just shows a relationship between two values, the x value and the y value. So let me give you an example. If my x-axis was number of credit hours, okay, so how many hours you're taking. The y-axis is going to be the total cost or total tuition. Well, there's a relationship between the two values. The more credit hours you take, what do you think is going to happen to your tuition? Well, it's going to go up. So as the credit hours increases, so does the tuition. If you reduce the credit hours, your tuition's going to reduce. So the relationship is, if I have 0 credit hours, right, it's usually going to cost me something. So $50 to apply or $50 as a student fee. Usually you start someplace, it's not 0. Then when I add a 3 credit course, now my tuition just rose because every credit hour it costs me more money. So I started with 0 credits, it's going to cost me, say, $50, and let's say it rises $100 per credit hour. So at this point right here, at 3 credit hours, what do you think your value is going to be? Your tuition is going to be the 300 plus the 50. So 300 because there's 3 credit hours and it's $100 per credit, plus the $50. Then, as I add in a second class, it's going to rise another $300. So we have a continual rise. So it's a relationship. Any linear equation is a relationship. It's a relationship between two values, and this is just one example. Another example would be if you had, you wanted to play golf and you wanted to get better and better and better. So if you're a golfer, you know that the lower the score, the better you're going to be, right? You want the lowest score possible in golf. So if your x-axis is the number of practice hours, so how many hours you practice in a week, and the y-axis is your golf score, okay, what do you think is going to happen? Well, as the more hours that you practice, the lower your score is going to go. So the more hours you practice, your score is going to drop. So that's a decreasing value. So I'm going to stop right there, and then we'll get into the actual graphing on the next video.